June 1348. A ship from Gascony docks at the port of Melcombe Regis in Dorset. A sailor steps ashore. He is already dying. Within days, the people around him begin to develop swellings in their groin and armpits, black, pus-filled lumps the size of eggs. Their skin bruises black. They vomit blood. Most are dead within 5 days. Some die in less than 24 hours. By autumn, the disease reaches London. By summer of 1349, it has covered the entire country. When it finally subsides in December of that year, between 40 and 60% of England's population is dead. 3 million people, gone in 500 days. The Black Death did not care about rank, wealth, or power. It killed peasants, and it killed archbishops. 2 successive archbishops of Canterbury died within months of each other. King Edward III's own daughter, Princess Joan, died of plague in Bordeaux on her way to her wedding. But some families survived. Their surnames, many of which you carry today, are the proof. And those names reveal not just that your bloodline made it through the worst catastrophe in English history, but how. Number 15, Smith, the most common English surname, and there is a reason it survived the Black Death when thousands of rarer names did not. Before the plague, England's population stood between 5 and 6 million. The surname pool was enormous. Thousands of distinct names spread across the country. When the plague killed half the population, it didn't kill names evenly. A family with 10 bearers might lose all 10. A name held by a single family in a single village could vanish overnight if that village was wiped out. Smith survived because every village in England needed a smith. He forged tools, repaired plows, shoed horses, made nails, built hinges, and, when called upon, forged weapons. A village without a smith could not farm, could not build, could not function. When plague struck, the smith was among the people the community fought hardest to protect and replace fastest when lost. The surname Smith appears in records across England both before and after 1348. Its sheer prevalence, its presence in nearly every parish, gave it a statistical advantage that rarer names did not have. But prevalence alone is not the reason Smith survived. It survived because the work it described was irreplaceable. And in a world where death had taken half of everything, the man who could repair what remained was the man the survivors could not afford to lose. Number 14, Baker. The baker worked with fire. His oven burned hot enough to kill the rats and fleas that carried the plague bacterium Yersinia pestis. Whether this heat offered any actual protection is debated by historians, but what is not debated is this. Bakers were essential workers in the most literal sense. Bread was the foundation of the medieval English diet. Without bakers, there was no bread. Without bread, the survivors starved. After the plague, the assize of bread, the medieval law regulating the price, weight, and quality of bread, became even more strictly enforced, because the government understood that food supply was the difference between recovery and collapse. Bakers who survived the plague found themselves in extraordinary demand. Their wages rose, their status rose, and their surname, recorded in parish after parish across England, endured. If your name is Baker, your bloodline survived the single deadliest event in English history, and did so because your ancestor made the one product that every survivor needed every single day. Number 13, Cooper. From the Latin cuparius, a maker of barrels, casks, and tubs. The cooper built the containers that stored ale, wine, grain, salted meat, and water. In a world without refrigeration, without plastic, without glass bottles at scale, the barrel was the universal storage technology. Nothing was transported, stored, or preserved without one. During the plague years, coopers became critical for a reason most people do not consider: burial. When churchyards overflowed and mass graves had to be dug, coffins were needed in quantities that overwhelmed every carpenter in the country. Coopers, skilled in building watertight containers, were pressed into coffin construction. The same hands that had built ale barrels now built boxes for the dead. The surname Cooper endured through the plague because the man who built containers was needed for everything, from feeding the living to burying the dead. Number 12, graves. Before the Black Death, most English villages buried their dead in the churchyard. The process was orderly, individual, and overseen by the parish priest. After June 1348, that system collapsed within weeks. The surname Graves, from the Old English gref, meaning a grave or a trench, attached itself to the families who dug them. During the plague, gravediggers worked in conditions that would be unthinkable in any other era. They handled bodies that were still infectious. They dug trenches large enough to hold dozens of corpses. In London, 2 emergency cemeteries, at East Smithfield and at Charterhouse, were created specifically to hold plague dead when existing churchyards ran out of space. Gravediggers during the plague were often themselves condemned men, prisoners, or individuals so desperate for income that they accepted a job everyone else refused. Some were paid handsomely, some were paid nothing, and some of them survived, whether through luck, constitution, or something in their blood that resisted the bacterium, and passed their name to children who carried it forward. If your name is Graves, your ancestor walked into plague pits when the rest of England was running away. Number 11. Sexton, from the medieval Latin sacristanus, the keeper of sacred objects. The sexton was the church official responsible for maintaining the building, ringing the bells, and, crucially, digging graves in the churchyard. During normal times, the sexton might bury a handful of parishioners per month. During the Black Death, that number could reach dozens per week in a single parish. The sexton was the man who stood at the intersection of death and the sacred, the person who ensured that even in a catastrophe, the dead received some form of Christian burial. It has been estimated that 40% of England's clergy died during the Black Death. Many of those who survived fled their parishes, abandoning their congregations. The sextons who stayed, who continued digging, continued ringing the death bell, continued performing the physical labor of burial when the priests had either died or run, became, in many parishes, the last functioning representative of the church. The surname Sexton marks a family whose ancestor did not run when the bells were ringing for the dead. He stayed and he dug. Number 10. Bellman. In plague-struck England, a bell meant death. The bellman, also called the bell ringer or the crier, walked through the streets of plague-affected towns, announcing the dead and calling for bodies to be brought out for collection. The image of the bellman walking through empty streets, ringing a handbell and calling, "Bring out your dead," has become one of the most iconic images of the plague in popular culture. The surname Bellman existed before the plague. It could refer to any town crier or bell ringer. But the Black Death transformed the role. The bellman became the voice of death itself. He counted the dead. He announced which streets had been affected. He was the last public official many dying people heard. Families named Bellman, who appear in records after 1349, carry a name that was forever changed by the plague. Before the Black Death, a bellman announced markets and proclamations. After the Black Death, a bellman announced how many of your neighbors had died in the night. If you're watching this and learning something about the name you carry, subscribe to Legacy Remains. We uncover the history hidden inside surnames. Hit subscribe, and the next video will already be waiting. Number 9. Johnson, Thompson, Wilson, Jackson. The sons' surnames, and they owe their existence in large part to the Black Death. Before 1348, the majority of English people had already adopted hereditary surnames, but the poorer families in the northern half of the country had not. They still used the older system of patronymics, identifying themselves by their father's first name: John's son, Thomas's son, William's son. The Black Death changed this. The massive depopulation created administrative chaos. Tax records needed to be rebuilt. Land ownership needed to be reestablished. The government, specifically through the poll tax of 1377, 1379, and 1381, needed to count and identify every surviving taxpayer. This bureaucratic pressure forced Northern English families to finally fix their patronymic descriptions into permanent hereditary surnames: Johnson, Thompson, Wilson, Jackson, Robinson, Harrison. These names, among the most common in the English-speaking world today, crystallized into permanent form in the decades immediately following the Black Death. They are, in a very real sense, surnames that the plague created. If your surname ends in son, your name was likely fixed into its permanent form because a medieval government needed to count the survivors of the worst pandemic in English history. Number 8. Freeman. Before the Black Death, most English peasants were villeins, legally bound to the land they worked, unable to leave their lord's estate without permission. The feudal system locked families into place for generations. The surname freeman during this period was rare because actual freemen were rare. After 1348, everything changed. With half the labor force dead, the surviving peasants discovered something extraordinary. Their work was now valuable. Lords who had once treated their villeins as property now competed for their labor. Peasants began leaving their manors, seeking higher wages elsewhere. Some lords offered freedom, legal freedom from villeinage, as an incentive to attract workers. The surname freeman exploded in the decades after the plague. It marked a family whose ancestor had transitioned from bound serf to free laborer, a transition that would have been virtually impossible before the Black Death made labor scarce and peasants powerful. If your name is Freeman, your ancestor's freedom was purchased with the lives of 3 million people. The plague killed half of England, and from that catastrophe, your family walked out of serfdom and into a new world. Number 7. Newcomers. After the Black Death, hundreds of English villages were partially or completely depopulated. Fields lay empty, houses stood abandoned, livestock wandered without owners. The survivors called these places lost villages, and over 400 deserted medieval villages have been identified by archaeologists across England. But not all depopulated villages stayed empty. Some were repopulated by families from other regions, families who migrated to claim the abandoned land, the empty houses, the untended fields. These arrivals were called the new men, the newcomers. The surnames Newman and Newcomb, recorded in increasing frequency in the decades after 1349, marked the families who arrived in a village that was not originally theirs. They took up land that had belonged to the dead. They farmed fields that someone else had plowed, and the village gave them a name that described exactly what they were: new. If your name is Newman or Newcomb, your ancestor did not inherit their land. They claimed it from a village that had been emptied by plague and was waiting for someone brave enough to start again. Number 6. Thatcher. A thatcher made roofs from straw, reed, or heather. Before the plague, this was a common but low-status trade. After the plague, it became something else entirely, a negotiating position. With half the workforce dead, every skilled craftsman in England suddenly held power they had never possessed. The Statute of Labourers, enacted in 1351, attempted to freeze wages at pre-plague levels and prevent workers from leaving their employers, but the law was widely ignored. Thatchers, carpenters, masons, and other skilled workers demanded and received wages that would have been unthinkable before 1348. The surname Thatcher marks a family that rode the post-plague labor shortage from low-status trade to economic independence. The plague did not just kill people, it destroyed the wage ceiling that had kept craftsmen poor for centuries. Number 5. Reeve. The Reeve was the estate manager, the man who oversaw the daily operations of a manor on behalf of the lord. He supervised the peasants, managed the harvest, collected rents, and maintained order. In the feudal hierarchy, the Reeve stood between the lord and the land. When the Black Death killed lords and their heirs, it was often the Reeve who inherited operational control of the estate. Some Reeves purchased land at dramatically reduced prices from desperate or dying landowners. Others simply continued managing estates whose owners had vanished, accumulating wealth and influence that would have been impossible before the plague. The surname Reeve marks a family whose ancestor occupied the exact position in medieval society where opportunity met catastrophe. The plague killed the men above him, and the Reeves stepped into the space they left. Number 4. Tyler. On June 15, 1381, a man named Wat Tyler rode into Smithfield, London, at the head of an army of peasants and demanded to speak to the King of England. The Peasants' Revolt of 1381 was the direct consequence of the Black Death. The plague had killed half the labor force. Wages had risen. Peasants had tasted freedom and economic power for the first time. And then the government, through the Statute of Labourers and a series of deeply unpopular poll taxes, tried to push them back down. Wat Tyler, a tiler of roofs from Kent, became the leader of the largest popular uprising in medieval English history. His army marched on London, burned the palace of John of Gaunt, stormed the Tower of London, and killed the Archbishop of Canterbury and the Lord Treasurer. Tyler himself was stabbed to death during a meeting with the 14-year-old King Richard II at Smithfield. The revolt failed in its immediate objectives, but it accelerated the collapse of serfdom in England. Within a generation, villeinage was effectively dead. The feudal system that had bound English peasants for 3 centuries dissolved, and it dissolved because the plague had made the old order unsustainable. The surname Tyler marks a family whose ancestor lived through the most turbulent generation in English social history, the generation that went from plague to freedom to revolution in 33 years. Number 3. Pardoner. When the Black Death was killing thousands per week, the church faced a crisis unlike anything in its history. Priests were dying as fast as their parishioners. Last rites could not be administered. Confessions could not be heard. Millions of people were dying without the sacraments that medieval Christianity considered essential for salvation. Pope Clement VI responded by granting a blanket remission of sins to all plague victims. He also authorized the sale of pardons, documents that promised the buyer forgiveness of sins and a reduced sentence in purgatory. The men who sold these pardons were called pardoners, and they became some of the most controversial and most profitable figures in post-plague England. Geoffrey Chaucer immortalized the pardoner in the Canterbury Tales, portraying him as a cynical manipulator who sold fake relics and false spiritual comfort to terrified people. The portrayal was devastating and, by most accounts, accurate. The surname Pardoner marks a family whose ancestor profited from the greatest spiritual crisis in English history. He sold hope to the dying. Whether that hope was genuine or fraudulent depended entirely on the man who sold it. Number 2. Flag. The flagellants were one of the most extraordinary phenomena of the Black Death. Across Europe, groups of men, sometimes hundreds, sometimes thousands, marched from town to town, stripped to the waist, publicly whipping themselves with leather straps embedded with iron spikes. They believed the plague was God's punishment for humanity's sins, and that by punishing themselves they could appease God's wrath and stop the disease. The movement began in Germany and spread rapidly across Europe. Flagellant processions arrived in England in 1349, though they were less widespread here than on the continent. The Church initially tolerated them, but Pope Clement VI condemned the movement in October 1349, declaring it heretical. The surname Flag, and its variants Flag, Flage, and Flague, has multiple possible origins, including a topographic name from Old English flage, meaning a piece of turf. But in the regions of England where flagellant activity was recorded, the name carries a darker resonance. Families named Flag in post-plague records may carry a name that connects to the most extreme spiritual response to the Black Death, a movement of men so desperate to survive that they tore their own flesh in public, believing that God was watching and would spare them. Number 1. Your surname. Every surname on this list, Smith, Baker, Cooper, Graves, Sexton, Bellman, Johnson, Freeman, Newman, Thatcher, Reeve, Tyler, Pardoner, Flag, shares one thing in common. They appear in English records from before 1348, and they are still carried by living people today. That means the families behind those names survived the Black Death. They lived when half of England died. But what this video has not yet told you is why some people survived while others did not. And the answer is not just luck or isolation or essential work. The answer is in your blood. In 1996, scientists studying the village of Iam in Derbyshire, a village that famously quarantined itself during a later plague outbreak in 1665, tracked down direct descendants of the survivors. They took DNA samples, and they found something remarkable. A significant percentage of Iam's plague survivor descendants carried a genetic mutation called CCR5-delta32, a deletion in a gene on chromosome 3 that alters the surface of white blood cells. This mutation appears to have prevented the plague bacterium from entering and hijacking the immune system's own cells. In 2022, a landmark study published in the journal Nature examined DNA extracted from the bones of people who died during the Black Death and compared it with DNA from people who survived. The researchers identified multiple genetic variants in the human immune system that were strongly selected for by the plague. People who carried certain versions of immune system genes were significantly more likely to survive. Those who did not carry them were significantly more likely to die. The implications are extraordinary. If your English surname existed before 1348 and you carry it today, your bloodline passed through a genetic bottleneck. The Black Death did not kill randomly. It killed preferentially, selecting for immune systems that could resist it and eliminating those that could not. Your ancestors survived not just because they were lucky, not just because they were essential workers or isolated farmers. They survived because something in their DNA, something you may still carry, gave them an edge that 3 million other people did not have. And here's the part that connects the medieval world to the modern one. The same CCR5 Delta 32 mutation that may have helped your ancestors survive the Black Death in 1348 has been shown to provide resistance to HIV. The gene that saved your bloodline 700 years ago is being studied today as a potential key to stopping one of the deadliest viruses of the 21st century. Your surname is not just a name, it is a survival record, a genetic receipt, a 700-year-old document written not in ink but in DNA, proving that when the worst pandemic in human history swept through England, your bloodline did not break, it adapted, it endured, and it is still here. 15 surnames. 15 corridors leading back through the most devastating 18 months in English history, through plague pits and empty villages, through burning ovens and tolling bells, through mass graves and desperate prayers, through a revolution that shattered feudalism, and through a genetic inheritance so powerful that modern science is still trying to unlock what it does. The Black Death killed between 40 and 60% of England's population. The surnames that survived are not ordinary names. They are monuments to the families that made it through, the essential workers, the death workers, the newcomers, the risen, and the genetically selected. Your surname is one of them. It survived the plague, it survived 7 centuries, and it carried you, the living proof that your bloodline does not break easily, to this moment. Drop your surname in the comments. Tell me what your family survived. And if you made it to the end of this video, hit subscribe to Legacy Remains. Another name, another bloodline, another history that nobody told you was yours.